that the sun shines down its power to all the world and makes the wind blow strong as it will. So lovely earth can stay lovely still.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is Energy Week with George Harvey and the very famous Tom Fennell, who you've all heard before, which is why he's so famous. Every day I go to the internet, do a bunch of snooping around, find articles on energy and get them into my blog, which is geoharvey.com. That's geoharvey.com. You can go there for the dates mentioned in here. Click on the calendar that's on the page, and first page, it's on the upper left, and you can find the day's news for that day and take a look at the show in detail.
Some of these things we're going to be talking about are very interesting.
Some of them are really interesting. There's some really amazing stuff.
Yeah, you could get. I got tied up in them last night.
just to kind of as a spoiler. I always like spoilers. I like knowing where we're going. One of the things we're going to talk about is solar power that is so inexpensive, it's unimaginable to me that anybody would want natural gas.
That's the way the market's moving, man.
It's the way the market's moving. Okay.
There's going to be a lot of changes.
There's going to be a lot of changes in the next couple of years. Yeah, the amount of money that's going into oil and gas exploration is going down fast, like a rock. I mean, I don't think the Great Depression hit the U.S. economy as fast as this decline in investment.
One of the things that happened, a lot of people wanting to get into oil and gas with fracking and stuff like that in a hurry. Borrowed heavily. With the drop in oil prices, they can't repay their loans.
Yeah. I mean, you know.
So there's a lot of activity back there. Companies getting sold, companies getting bought.
And the damage that's going to be done worldwide in oil and in the oil and gas sector is projected to be huge compared to the mortgage failures that happened in 2007, 2008, which was
doesn't look good.
That doesn't look good. The latest material I've seen on that was that worldwide that cost close to $19 trillion.
I can't even think about that.
No, it's you need to be an astronomer. You need to be an astronomer to understand the amount of money that was lost there. Anyway, we should start our work.
I think we can.
Okay, and I will put up a slide there, which is whoops. Where did it go? Where did it go? Come on, let's get going here. Ah, there it is.
We got a picture
of a boat. Okay, this is from
background, but it's not up on the screen.
There you go, a boat with a what looks like an artificial rainbow.
Yeah, I'm wondering about that.
Where
did that come from?
I think a rainbow that's that low to the horizon.
Definitely not a rainbow.
Yeah, it would require a mist in front of the camera. You wouldn't be able to. You'd see the mist.
And probably a publicity photo from the Navy.
Yeah, well, there you go. My uncle used to make publicity stuff for the Navy. He was a cover artist for the Saturday Evening Post.
Oh, cool.
And he knew enough about paint chemistry that he could sabotage all those paintings so they would not be available to posterity.
Huh?
Yeah.
No kidding.
He did a painting of Admiral Halsey sitting, I think it was Halsey, maybe it was Nimitz, sitting on the bridge of a battleship wearing a baseball cap with his feet in a tub of hot water. And he walked into his studio and slammed the door and the face fell off the painting because the paint chemistry was bad.
Oh boy.
The lesson in that is if you want to be an artist and valued by the future, learn paint chemistry or your paintings will fall apart. Okay, Science World Report brought us this. And what's the title, Tom? You lost
Climate change poses daily risk to the military.
Yeah, climate change could potentially
Experts suggest swift action.
Swift action. Climate change could potentially cause great distress to military operations, according to the U.S. military officials. In a statement by the Center for Climate and Security, they say climate change increases the risk of international conflict, that it could pose strategic risks, and that inaction against the issue is not advisable.
Correct.
However, Donald Trump has a solution to climate change, which is, don't worry about it, it's a hoax. Okay.
Well, the military has been on top of this.
Which, climate change or Donald Trump?
No, nobody can be on top of Donald. Donald Trump isn't on top of Donald Trump.
Yeah, I think that's true. Yeah, okay.
Well, let's see what it says here really quick. Climate change could affect water, food, and energy supplies and result in hard-to-predict circumstances and security risks.
Yeah.
Some of the other risks that climate change could be the cause of. Now, this is really scary. State failure, mass migration, that's happening now.
Yes, it is.
And the creation of ungoverned spaces.
Ungoverned spaces.
Basically, countries without a leader.
Okay.
Without a government.
Yeah, well, that's been happening too, and that's really, I think, why ISIS came into being.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And another takeaway from this one is, by 2050, this is a warning from the NOAA, by 2050, a vast majority of coasts along the U.S. will experience 30 or more days of intense flooding.
Each year.
Due to rising sea levels.
Yeah, each year.
Each year.
Yeah. So New York City, what is New York City going to do about its subway system if it gets 30 days of intense flooding a year?
I think they're going to build dikes.
That's 1 day out of 12 that they have to take care of, and that means the subway system
is
not going to work. Nope. Of course, they could always rebuild the subway system above ground. They could call it the L.
That'd be clever. Yeah, that'd be clever.
Yeah. Okay. Should we go on?
Yes, let's go.
Clean Technica. That article, by the way, was on Thursday, September 15th, as is this one.
Carbon Tracker declares renewable power as today's cheapest option.
There you go. According to a report from the independent financial think tank.
I guess we got a picture coming up
Carbon
here too,
Tracker. It's after this one, I think.
What's the next one?
Yep. Carbon Tracker Initiative. Renewable power generation costs are already lower on average worldwide than fossil fuels. It says clean energy plants will only become more cost effective by 2020. The findings are based on examination of the levelized costs of electricity.
Want to explain what the levelized costs of electricity are?
Well, basically, you take the wholesale price of electricity, average wholesale price, and you add to it the subsidies that form of electricity gets.
Okay.
Okay. And there are certain subsidies that are not added in, such as the cost of external costs of fossil fuels. In other words,
how much you got to pay for them?
How much you got to pay because you've got asthma or because
the external
you've got
costs.
Lyme disease. External costs, the costs of waste for nuclear fuel, those are not counted in. The cost of Price Anderson or other nuclear insurance, but basically the day-to-day subsidies and the wholesale cost comes to the levelized cost. And it happens right now, the lowest levelized cost for electricity comes from wind power. And the second lowest comes from solar.
Comes from solar.
And the third lowest, which is almost equal to solar, except that solar is going down and this is going up, is natural gas. And
I got a graph here, and it looks like natural gas is a lot more.
Yeah.
A lot higher.
Yeah. And
wind and solar are down there.
Definitely.
And they're going down.
And they're going down.
And
natural
gas and coal are going up.
Right. The problem that they have with natural gas is that it cannot go down without destroying the industry.
Is that so? There's nothing left to profit, huh?
Yeah, there's not a lot of profit left in natural gas. And they just have to pump as fast as they possibly can, which is why exploration has been cut in half. You know, and this thing about coal, for crying out loud, you're not going anywhere on coal.
I think coal is going to be considered an antique in a few more years.
I think coal is rightfully already considered an antique, and nuclear is not far behind it. Coal and nuclear, you're talking about levelized costs that are 5 times as high as the cost of wind power.
Wow.
Yeah. So you've got a graph there. What does it say about wind and okay.
That's not one of your graphs?
No, it's not. I should have put it up.
I probably put it up just so I could talk about it.
Yeah, okay. Well, should we go on?
Yeah, we might as well. Can't
okay,
dance.
Our next item, same day, September 15th, is from Vermont Biz. And that, oh, come on, you silly machine. This is it's an indication of artificial intelligence that computers have achieved artificial malice. This is
I get the picture up.
I have an artificial malice machine built into a Windows computer. Okay.
Well, the headline here is Green Mountain Power and Sun Common launch Vermont Solar Storage Partnership.
Right, and this
is pretty innovative.
It is, and it's interesting to anybody who lives in Vermont, or at least those people who live in the Green Mountain Power territory, which is about 3/4 of the people in the country. In the state. Country. Vermont is an independent republic that's masquerading as a state, isn't it?
According to some people.
This is from Vermont Biz. Green Mountain Power and Sun Common announced a partnership allowing customers to store their own solar power for security during power outages. The first of its kind program in Vermont partners a utility with a solar company to offer home storage that strengthens the grid and allows homes to power from solar during outages. This is something a lot of people don't understand. The fact that you've got solar panels on your roof does not mean that you're going to have electricity when the grid goes down.
Yeah, that's correct.
You got to pay extra for that.
Your infrastructure in the house may not work.
You got to pay extra for that. But you can do that using this program that Green Mountain Power and Sun Common figured out.
Well, we've talked about several aspects of this. This, I think, is a new iteration of it. But we've talked about them allowing you to lease storage batteries, buy them outright, or share them with Green Mountain Power.
Right. And
you get them real cheap if you let Green Mountain Power use them.
Yes. And in this particular case, what they've done is they've said, okay, let's combine that with solar power so that people can have this on their homes, and combine the letting Green Mountain Power use them with disconnecting from the grid when the grid goes down, because you don't want to have people electrocuted because they're working on the grid and your power.
They got precautions on that.
Yeah. But they have to be built into. This is something that's supposed to be addressed on the home by home basis. And then the whole thing can be financed. And I just wrote an article for Green Energy Times on the Sun Common headquarters, which is carbon positive. The headquarters, Sun Common's headquarters, has solar panels all over the roof, and their parking has solar panels all over it, and they're actually producing twice as much power as they need.
Okay.
So they sold a few panels, or rights to use a few panels. I'm not sure what the contract is.
How it works, but
to people as a community solar system, and they are grid positive, net positive, meaning that they produce more power than they consume.
They're using, Where is Sun Common located?
Waterbury.
Waterbury, yeah. Cool.
Okay, Waterbury, Vermont, not Connecticut. Sun Common is, I believe, the largest solar installer in the state.
In the state, huh?
Yeah. Yep. It's not one of those big companies.
Well, here's the takeaway here. I mean, it's all part of the package. By charging a home storage unit with solar power, homes can become self-sufficient during outages.
Right.
Keeping the internet connected, phones charged, and the fridge chilled.
Yep.
Essential stuff.
And very likely
television,
the furnace running.
And
if you've got enough power, it could take care of your
whatever electricity is needed to get
your heat pump. And as a matter of fact, that's another thing about the Sun Common headquarters, is that headquarters was designed by Bill McClay, who's an architect here in Vermont, who's very experienced in renewable and sustainable architecture. And they did not include any backup heat system.
Interesting.
Because they don't need it.
That's interesting.
Yeah. And they don't need a backup heat system because it's a passive solar building.
Okay.
Extremely well insulated.
Okay.
And of course, if the grid goes down, they're producing twice as much power as they need.
Okay.
So they could plug in electric space heaters if they have to.
If they had to.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So, yeah. Anyway, we're up to Friday, September 16th, and we've got an item from Clean Technica, and I'm going to put up a new picture, which you can put on the screen if you'd like.
I think I will.
Yeah, there you go. This is kind of depressing.
I think I will. By the way, in those pictures, we're not seeing the actual heat. We're seeing the increase.
Difference in the heat. If it's yellow or orange or red,
or blue,
it's
less.
It's hotter, and if it's blue, it's cooler.
Yeah, right.
And if it's dark red, then it's the hottest. And dark red means a difference of 4 to 5.9 degrees Celsius.
That's a lot.
That's almost 10 degrees Fahrenheit.
That's a lot.
Yeah. Okay. So, what's the name of this article?
August 2016 ties July for the hottest month ever recorded.
Yeah, and the
Didn't
hottest.
I hear something like that last month?
Yeah, and the month before,
that?
and the month before. Every month in the last, I don't know, 10 months or something,
It's been hotter.
The month has broken a record for that month. And of course, this August was the hottest August on record.
But it's a hoax.
Yeah, right. In what has become a common refrain this year, last month ranked as the hottest August on record, according to NASA, which, by the way, Donald Trump says is lying on behalf of the Chinese because it's a Chinese hoax. The month tied July as the hottest record the world has seen in the last 136 years. August came in at 1.76 degrees Fahrenheit, or 0.98 degrees Celsius above the average for 1951 to 1980, and is 0.16 degrees Celsius above August of 2014. This is from Clean Technica, and that is a little depressing, I think. However,
Moving right along.
Okay. SC Now has this.
Tesla wins massive contract for grid-scale batteries.
There you go.
Grid-scale batteries.
Grid scale. Tesla has won a bid to supply grid-scale power in Southern California to help prevent electric shortages following the biggest natural gas leak in U.S. history. The battery system will provide 20 megawatts of power with energy sufficient for 2,500 homes for a full day. A 2-megawatt system costs $2.9 million, but larger systems are negotiated. So this is something less than $29 million for this.
Reading into the article, it said the real significance of this deal was the record time within which the lithium-ion battery packs are being deployed.
Yeah.
They pulled out all the stops and made it happen.
Yeah. Well, they don't want... I think what the people in Los Angeles have discovered is that storing huge quantities of natural gas is not safe necessarily.
Duh.
Yeah, don't light a match around this neighborhood. There you go. Okay. So
yeah, they're going to more solid-state systems of storing energy.
Yes, and they're
Which makes sense.
Yes.
Well, of course, they didn't have the battery technology as little as 5 years ago.
Yes, that's true. And the other thing that they could do instead of worrying about that is stop everybody driving cars, because of course they can backfire and cause sparks and things like that. Don't let anybody smoke. No oil burners, no propane, no natural gas. Just keep all flames away from all neighborhoods, and everything's dandy. Okay, our next item is from Microgrid Media. We have a picture of an aircraft carrier.
Yeah, let's get this it's all the pictures up already.
Yep.
You're ahead of me.
Aircraft carrier at Pearl Harbor. I did it by mental telepathy.
Contract awarded to design 6 interconnected microgrids at Pearl Harbor.
This is an interesting article. The interconnected, but the interconnected microgrids.
So it's microgrids with microgrids.
Yes, and they're
grids within grids.
Yeah, grids within grids. The High Technology Development Corporation announced that its Hawaii Center for Advanced Transportation Technologies program just awarded a $1.5 million contract to design a series of 6 interconnected microgrids at Joint Base Pearl Harbor Hickam. Each microgrid is to be supplied by its own renewable energy. Every time I read that name, I want to pronounce it hiccup.
That's the Air Force Base.
Yeah, it's the Air Force Base.
This is a very large installation.
They're getting $1.5 million to design it.
Just to design it.
Just
So
to
it gives you
design
some
it.
idea what's going on.
Yeah, but what's happening here is that they have 6 microgrids that are interconnected to intersupport each other.
Yep.
Each one can operate independently of all the others, or they can be connected in whatever way they want to make them connected to produce a larger microgrid or mini grid, which powers the base. And this, I think, is a model for the future of the electric grid in the United States.
I think you're right.
Worldwide.
Yeah. So, certainly something like that is.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Any more on that?
Basically, no.
Okay.
You've talked about what's going on there.
Yep.
Let's move to the September 17th.
We are up to September 17th, which was Saturday, and this is from Energy Digital.
This gold mine is now a groundbreaking renewable scheme.
Wow. The once lucrative Kidston Gold Mine in northern Queensland ceased operation 15 years ago. Now it will be the home of a one-of-a-kind renewable energy project. GenX Power will use the mine's 2 craters to create the world's first pumped hydroelectric energy storage system in conjunction with an integrated solar farm.
It's sort of a giant flow battery, isn't it?
Well,
moving the water from one to the other one.
It's pumped storage, except that basically you have 2 lakes and you're just pumping water
from
back
one
and
to
forth.
the other one. Yep.
So you pump it from the low lake to the high lake, and then you use the gravity from the high lake to produce energy on the return cycle. And obviously, you lose energy constantly doing this on a day-by-day basis.
Well, if you look at it from that standpoint, it doesn't make sense at all.
No.
But that's not the standpoint you got to look at.
Yeah, on an hour-by-hour basis, you've got a choice. Do I want to consume power or do I want to produce power?
Yeah.
And
there are times when they need that power.
That's right. And there are times when you need to consume power, and this is true not just of supporting renewables, but of supporting baseload power. Because baseload power is extremely inflexible. And you need to, if you have a nuclear power plant, if that power plant's got more electricity than the grid needs, you got to figure out what to do with the electricity. And if it doesn't have enough, you got to figure out where that excess is coming from. And the choice of either using it to pump the water up to the top of the mountain or produce power by running the water back to the bottom of the mountain makes it very, very useful to have such a thing.
And they can charge that either using solar on site.
That's right.
Or using energy from the grid.
Yes.
Whatever.
And in this particular case, they've got it set up so that it's basically powered by solar energy. So this is solar power powering the grid 24/7.
Bingo.
Bingo. There you go.
They said it couldn't be done.
It is dispatchable power, which is what people claim baseload power is. But baseload power, although it's dispatchable, also produces excess that has to be dealt with. In this particular case, there doesn't have to be any excess. So you don't have to worry about it. There you go.
Yep.
Okay. Are we done with that?
Let's move on.
Our next item is from the Natural Resources Defense Council, and it has two graphics.
Yeah, let's pull the graphics up.
Yeah, this first graphic is a...
you got to move it.
Yep, that's right.
Good.
Yeah, I figured out how to do that. But you got to put that on the screen there so that people can see it.
Yeah.
And it's not just in the background. There you go. This first graphic is a growth of solar power in the United States over a period of 8 years? I think it's 8 years. It starts in...
It's 8, yep.
Yeah, it starts...
Solar is 8 years.
Right. And you can see that, we started with 840 some gigawatt hours per year, and we ended up with 26,164. This is a growth of about 42% per year.
According to this, 44.
44%, yeah. Okay, and this article is from the Natural Resources Defense Council. And
it's called Recent Progress Further Strengthens Clean Power Plan Outlook.
Yep. As the D.C. Court of Appeals prepares to hear challengers' arguments against the Clean Power Plan on September 27th, the most up-to-date analysis shows that the Clean Power Plan's goals have become much more achievable.
We got the wind generation?
Yep, I'll put that up. The electricity sector is already shifting to clean energy. And here we see the wind power going from 2005 to 2015, which is 11
years.
11 years, including, it always kind of threw me because you subtract 2005 from 2015, and you get 10. So why isn't 10 years? Well, it's because
covering both sides.
You're covering both ends.
Yeah.
So here you're growing from 17,000 something gigawatt hours, and you're winding up at 180, 190, almost 191,000. This is a growth that's in the range of 22%.
Look at those pictures.
Yeah.
I was going to recommend that people click on the Natural Resources Defense Council link there.
Yeah.
So they could see these things in animation, but we're seeing them
We're
here.
seeing them here. Yeah, I figured out. I've tried doing this in the past, and I have to put it into this slideshow in a particular way, or it doesn't work. But anyway,
it's working okay now.
Have you got, there were other things involved in that. There were other charts or other graphs or something, other images?
I don't have any further on that,
Okay.
but there was a lot of
There's a lot of information.
A lot of graphics.
A lot of
That was a
graphics.
very interesting article.
Very interesting article.
In
from
depth. It was several pages of stuff.
Natural Resources Defense Council. And basically what it's telling you is we can do it. We've got all the technology we need. We can do it. The only thing is that we're going to have to start realizing that you can't support coal and go to renewable energy at the same time. And of course, Donald Trump wants us to believe that he can resurrect coal and put the coal workers, who, by the way, have largely been employed at other jobs now because this downturn in the coal industry has been going on since 2000.
Right within the coal industry for years up until now, underground coal mines have been being replaced by mountaintop removal.
Yeah.
240 guys underground have been replaced by 9 guys above.
Yeah, and that they have removed the tops of 500 mountains in the Appalachians. 500. And when they do that, the boulders they get from the top as they're
Everything
cutting
goes
it
down into the valleys.
Everything goes
They just
down to
dump it.
they just dump it in the valleys. So the beautiful little streams that ran through valleys in West Virginia and Kentucky
I've
and
seen
so
'em.
forth are choked with boulders, and
I've seen 'em.
they're not going to recover. It's going to take millions of years for those things to recover. It's complete wreckage. They will not support. You can't have a water table in something like that because it's the water just runs out the bottom.
Yeah.
You can't build up soil on the top and have it be there. It's going to be soil that's going to be you're going to have plants on that can survive complete drought.
Yep.
So, they're just destroying the countryside. And what are they doing that for? So they can burn coal, which is going to put mercury into Lake Champlain. And Donald Trump wants to resurrect that. Donald Trump, he points at his head and says, I have a really good brain. He's probably, if you look up the word fool, you discover that a fool can be intelligent. He just doesn't think correctly. And that, I think, Donald Trump is probably one of the biggest fools in the history of, he reminds me of the anti-Masonic Party.
I don't know anything about that.
The anti-Masonic Party was a major political party in the United States that was built on the idea that the Masons had to be stopped.
Okay.
And today it's Mexicans, but in those days it was Masons. Donald Trump is a guy who said he knows all about what it was like to dodge bullets in Vietnam because although he didn't go there, he was in the United States dodging STDs. Any veteran, why would a veteran vote for Donald Trump? What is a conservative? A conservative is a person who conserves, right?
Well, that's what I always thought.
Yeah, he conserves. The big thing there is finances, but Donald Trump says, I'm the king of debt. I love debt. And then on another occasion, he said, you don't have to worry about default. You print your own money.
That's wrong, sure.
All right. What conservative would go with that? I mean, the United States right-wing politics has lost its mind. And he was endorsed by the National Rifle Association. And within about 4 days, he called for gun controls. Which he has dropped, by the way.
Oh.
He
make
followed that by saying, and you should be allowed to take a gun to when you go out to drink in a bar. That would have stopped that shooting.
Oh, yeah.
And then
That's a great idea.
Then the NRA says, we're not interested in that one. That's not a good idea. If you want to have, a gun protect you in a bar, bring a designated driver who's armed. And And, you know, Donald Trump was endorsed by the NRA, and when that happened, I was an NRA life member.
Yeah.
That lasted for less than 48 hours.
Yeah.
And the only reason it lasted that long was because I had to wait till Monday to mail in my membership card. This is a guy who is saying it is a hoax, and the U.S. military is saying it's the biggest problem we've got, talking about climate change.
Bingo.
This guy is, from a political point of view, from a conservative point of view, a complete nightmare. He's worse than Hillary.
That's hard to believe. That's hard to believe.
I can't bring myself to vote for Hillary, so as an American conservative, I'm going to vote for a socialist, Jill Stein. This guy is worse than Hillary. I'm sorry, we should be talking about
Let's move on.
The news of... Okay, our next item is from the East Hampton Star.
For those who don't know it, East Hampton is way out at the far end of Long Island.
Far from New York City.
Far from New York
Far
City.
east as you can get.
State releases plan for harnessing offshore wind energy. So
Well,
New York's getting on the bandwagon.
They sure are, and this is a comprehensive plan. Governor Andrew M. Cuomo announced the release of New York State's offshore wind blueprint, a framework that could lead to a proposed 90-megawatt, 15-turbine wind farm 30 miles east of Montauk. The blueprint is an initial step toward harvesting the 39 gigawatts of wind energy potential that lies off New York's Atlantic coast. And you know what? New York has more potential than that because it can get wind from Lake Ontario and Lake Erie.
On the other end of the state.
Yes.
Yeah, but this particular area that they're talking about from Montauk Point all the way to Cape Cod.
Yep.
In between is Rhode Island. They're already starting to build wind turbines there.
Oh, the wind turbines are already installed for Block Island.
That's correct. They're ready. They're about to turn them on.
They say by November.
Yeah. So I would predict that in another 25 years, that's going to be nothing but wind turbines.
Well, there's going to be a lot of them out
There's going to be a lot of
Well, I mean,
there's a lot of potential there.
The
Why
state
not?
of Massachusetts has voted that they're going to be 1,600 megawatts of wind power. So, you know, offshore wind power.
Offshore.
So that's, you know, that
And they're starting to get on the ball down in Maryland and Virginia too. So
they've got to replace the Pilgrim nuclear power plant. They've got to replace their coal burning power plants. And by golly, it looks like they're not going to be getting natural gas. So, or they might not get natural gas because some of these pipelines that they were talking about have been canceled.
yeah.
So, okay.
Okay, we'll move along.
Move along. We're still
moving from New York to Los Angeles.
Yep,
huh?
but we're still on September 17th, Saturday.
Yeah, we are. This
This
the
is from
last one.
Think Progress.
Los Angeles City Council backs planning for 100% renewable energy.
Yeah, the Los Angeles City Council took a major step toward making the city run on clean energy alone. The council directed the Los Angeles Department of Water and Power to develop a plan for going 100% renewable, including looking at where, when, and how the city should allocate resources to achieve that goal.
There's a good quote here that's a good takeaway. One of their council members.
Yes?
The biggest, boldest, most important thing this city can do to improve local air quality and reduce our carbon footprint is to entirely eliminate fossil fuels as a source of electric generation in this city.
Yeah, I got news for you. The best thing we can do as a world is to eliminate fossil fuels altogether.
I wouldn't
what?
argue the point.
I just wrote an article for Green Energy Times, which is not going to be in the October issue, but it is an article that I wrote and hope will be coming up. I'll post it online if it doesn't go into the magazine. Long article, 3 times the length of a standard article, which tells you about how much content there is there, and it just describes the many, many ways we can have liquid or gas fuels that are replacements for fuels that we already use that do not put any extra carbon into the atmosphere. They either are synthetic, coming from carbon dioxide, or they are carbon neutral in many cases.
So are there either trees where new growth offsets?
Well, some of them, there is biomass in there, but we don't need that.
So new growth will offset what's put in the air by burning them.
I'll give you an idea.
Yeah.
In 2012, the United States Navy estimated that it would, wrong year, 2013. They estimated that the cost of producing aviation fuel from carbon dioxide that was already dissolved in lake and river waters in the United States, using wind power would be $1 a gallon for aviation fuel.
Didn't we talked about that?
Yes.
Yeah.
How are you going to compete with that with oil that has to come out of the ground? You can't do it.
Well, I think that's the lesson.
Yeah. Okay. Should we go on?
Yeah, we got a nice picture here. If we
do,
get it up.
although it's kind of indistinct. It's fuzzy. And this comes from cbc.ca, and I did look for a clearer picture of that online, and I could not find it. It comes from the Tuglick Energy Company.
It's an interesting picture because that structure there is some kind of a
ceremonial structure?
I don't know. It's definitely man-made.
Like.
You know, whether it was done for aesthetics or whether it's a religious thing, I don't know.
I don't know. Anyway, what's the title?
Wind, solar energy, real options for Canada's remote Arctic communities.
Yep.
Well, they're out of there in the middle of nothing. They're not on the grid.
Yeah, in order to get power, they've got to bring in oil and burn it.
They're burning diesel.
A University of Waterloo study says bringing solar and wind energy to Canada's remote Arctic communities goes beyond being possible and environmentally beneficial to big savings. If you run the system as it is now versus you run with renewables, the savings are so compelling that basically you have a business case. And this is according to one of the articles of the study.
Well, the article says in some communities, using renewable energy options like wind and solar could mean millions of dollars in savings.
And in a community of 30 people, that's a lot of money.
And Alaska's doing the same thing. The end of that article just shifts over to Alaska.
Yep.
70 small communities have renewable hybrid systems using wind, solar, or hydropower to reduce their dependence on diesel. These communities are just as remote, just as small, and just as difficult to work in.
Yeah, well, I'm sorry. I think any place is it called Nunavik is going to be difficult to work in.
I don't have that word. Nunavut.
Nunavut. That's
the
territory.
The territory, the northern part of, it's about half of Canada.
Yeah, it's huge.
It's huge.
It's the territory that used to be called the Northwest Territories, or at least part of it.
Part of it, yeah.
Okay, our next item, and we're still on Sunday, September 18th, is from the Daily Pioneer.
19,000 villages electrified so far, and I'll give this word a try. Chhattisgarh.
Chhattisgarh. That's the way I got it when I looked it up. Yeah. A total of 18,960 out of 19,567 villages have been electrified in the Indian state of Chhattisgarh. So far, the central government announced. This leaves 607 villages to be supplied. Some of the villages have been supplied with power from the state's electric company's grid. Others have been supplied with their own local power. And most of those villages, the overwhelming majority, as I believe, had no electric power just 5 years ago.
Nothing whatsoever.
Yeah, in most of those villages. This is a push that has been brought about by the Indian government, which, like the Chinese, who, by the way, have already succeeded in doing this, they wanted to get electric power to every village.
Well, they're well on their way.
In this particular
they're bringing these
state,
people. I've said it before. They're bringing these people from the 17th century to the 21st.
Yeah,
almost overnight.
Almost overnight. Okay, we are up to Monday, September 19th.
Yeah,
and this is from Clean Technica, and we have a picture for this.
Yeah.
That is not a terribly exciting looking picture, but it's a picture nonetheless.
There's a good story behind it.
There is. Those are lilies, by the way.
Are they?
Yeah.
6 states declare emergency gasoline shortages after a Koch-owned pipeline spill.
Yeah, and guess what? We're not hearing about this in the news. I'll bet you the people down south who live in that area are. But national news...
Well, no, it's not making national news.
It's not making national news. On September 9th, a 36-inch pipeline was shut down in Alabama after it began... Is that how you pronounce it? After it began leaking thousands of gallons of gasoline into the Cahaba River, which is what that picture is showing. 6 different states declared emergencies in anticipation of a significant fuel shortages resulting from the shutdown, but so far, the news has barely scratched its way onto the national radar. And that is just a significant example of the news media failing, which it does often.
I'm not sure it's a failure so much as a somewhat of an obstruction.
Obstruction. In other words, it's intentional.
I think so. Yeah.
It's not deceit. It is just disingenuous that you could have a news program.
Disingenuous is a good word. Yeah.
You could omit this from, and you could say, and ladies and gentlemen, that is the news. All right, should we go on?
I'm trying to see, is there anything worthwhile talking about this?
Well, our next one.
Well, yeah, there is.
Okay.
This pipeline spill has already resulted in a price spike in wholesale cost of gasoline.
Yeah.
Long lines have quickly amassed at gas stations in the 6 states.
Yes.
Social medias took their accounts to document the chaos and dwindling gasoline supply.
The replacement for the news is social
the internet.
media.
Yep.
Yeah.
Bingo.
Okay, our next item is from vtdigger.org.
Okay. Conflicting goals create a dilemma on Green River.
Yeah.
And it's not the Green River down here, it's the Green River up north.
Okay. Vermont utility Morrisville Water and Light has appealed a state finding that utility officials say could turn a marginally profitable hydroelectric dam into an operation that loses more than $100,000 a year and poses downstream dangers. The Agency of Natural Resources officials say federal law required them to rule as they did.
This is a very interesting article. It's a long article. It's worth reading. Mm-hmm. It's kind of fun. Talks about the history of the dam and why the government is saying they got to do this. And it's optimistic.
It's optimistic.
It's saying at the very end, you know, they're going to resolve. They're going to work this out.
They're going to work it out.
They don't want to. They don't want this hydro plant to shut down.
Yes. But they're going to have to figure out how to work it out and keep it within the bounds of federal law.
Well, there's one ironic piece here. One of the things they're trying to preserve is plants that have developed there because the dam was there.
Yes. There you go. Okay. We have to move on. We've still got 6
Well, we're
items.
on Tuesday.
We're at Tuesday, September 20th, and we have a picture there of an offshore oil rig. And by the way, the reason why that picture doesn't have a credit on the screen is because the article that I got it from, which is the article in oilprice.com that we're dealing with here, didn't credit it. And when I don't have a credit on the screen, it's because I didn't see a credit. So I don't know.
You just make one up.
I could do that. This particular picture of an oil grid was taken by an oil worker who worked at that rig, which is in the North Sea, and his name is Daffy Duck. Okay.
Oil investment crash could continue for another year.
Yeah, this is an opinion.
This is the investment we've been talking about.
Yeah.
They're not investing.
Yep. This is an opinion piece. I marked it as an opinion piece because it's projecting something about the stock market, or not the stock market, the investment market. Investment in upstream operations in the oil and gas industry shrank by a quarter last year and is expected to continue to shrink this year by another 24%. Next year, the trend could continue for the longest investment decline in the history of the industry.
There's a couple of takeaways here.
Yeah.
Most of the decline in upstream, that's exploration and stuff, investment, was a result of lowered costs.
Yeah.
Okay, it's cheaper to do it, so they're still investing.
Yeah.
But it's costing them less.
Yeah.
But one of the reasons why the costs are less is because there's been a lot of cost cutting in the industry.
Well,
and what is that going to mean?
It means, among other things, it means that we need to have regulations on the methane emissions from these fields.
Among other things.
Among other things. Just an example, which of course Donald Trump says we shouldn't have because it restricts industry. So
and then another
citizens
thing
don't count, industrial investors do.
Another thing that's happening is wind and solar power has become cheaper, so the investors are shifting.
Yeah, and you know, wind power and solar power, one of the things that's beautiful about that is once the initial investment is made, you're selling electricity
you have to
that
pay
costs you practically nothing to.
You don't have to buy fuel.
You're just getting money.
Yep.
Okay. All right. Should we go on?
We should move on.
Okay. Did we get that picture on the screen?
The picture was on the screen.
Okay,
yeah.
good.
Yep. When we started talking, I took it off.
Renew Economy brought us this item.
solar price hits a record. This is a broken record.
It's
Solar price
over
hits
and
a
over
record
again.
of 2.42 cents a kilowatt hour and may fall further.
And we're getting into astonishing levels here.
Absolutely.
I mean, this is I'm going to read this.
They're going to start paying you to take electricity.
Well,
some parts of the country
they're almost
doing
doing that in Texas.
Yeah.
The price of solar PVs continues to fall. On Monday, a new record low of 2.42 cents per kilowatt hour was set in a tender for a large solar park in Abu Dhabi, not by an industrial outlier, but by the biggest manufacturer of solar modules in the world, Jinko Solar. Even this could be beaten, as there's reports of another lower bid coming. Now, just so people will understand what this means, about 15 years ago, you might remember when it was, Tom, but it was about 15 years ago, I think, the state of Vermont signed an agreement with Vermont Yankee to buy power at 3.5 cents per kilowatt hour.
Yeah.
And then
that was a good deal at the
time.
time.
Yeah, it was a good deal. After 10 years, that agreement was over.
Yep.
And Vermont Yankee wanted to sell more power to the state of Vermont, and they came to Vermont. They wanted more money for their power, but they said, we've got a deal you can't turn down.
And they turned it down.
And they turned it down. The deal that they offered was 6.5 cents per kilowatt hour from nuclear, but it was beat by Hydro-Quebec, which offered 6 cents per kilowatt hour. Now, at that time, the lowest price power we could get was 3.5 cents from landfill gas at a site in Connecticut. Okay?
Wow.
Now, here's what has happened. Solar power prices have fallen to the point where a huge deal has been cut long-term at 2.42 cents per kilowatt hour. That's
in Abu Dhabi.
That's in Abu Dhabi, but even so,
a lot of sun. So
they have a lot of sun in Abu Dhabi. But if you did double that in the state of Vermont and had 4.84 cents per kilowatt hour,
still cheaper than 6.
It's still cheaper than 6, which is what we ended up paying because it was cheaper than 6.5, which is the best nuclear power could do.
Wow.
What do you say to this? And the price of solar is continuing to go down.
Well, this is a takeaway from that article.
Yeah.
Stunning cost reductions continue across renewable energy technologies, with new records set in recent months for onshore and offshore wind, solar, thermal, and storage.
Yeah. And in the near future, not that far out, I'm going to bet within 2.5 years, we're going to see oil substitutes coming to market cheaper than oil coming from the ground. So it'll be cheaper.
That's moving right along.
I think it's moving right along. It's just something that I think, is really coming up. We talked about why earlier. Our next item is from Clean Technica.
We were talking about the Navy before.
Yep.
This is the Army. But
yes.
It's the Army, but it's not the Army.
Yes.
U.S. Army welcomes Dakota Access protesters to stay indefinitely.
What is this
This is
about?
interesting.
The Federal Appeals Court ruled it would take more time to consider a request from the Standing Rock Sioux Tribe for an emergency injunction against the Dakota Access Pipeline. Well, that's the bad news. The good news is, but at the same time, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers issued a special use permit for protesters to legally occupy federal lands at Lake Oahe. I don't know how to pronounce Oahe.
I'll take that.
Okay. I'm sorry,
If
OAHE.
anybody's watching this and they're not aware of what's going on, these protests are big out there.
They are indeed.
People are moving from the East Coast to go out there to protest.
This is similar.
Solidarity.
It's similar to the Keystone.
Some of the same companies are involved.
Yeah, and it's the same kind of thing. They don't want these pipelines crossing tribal lands. And
more particularly, screwing up with their water supply.
Yes, and
crossing rivers and stuff like this.
The Army Corps of Engineers is in charge of every crossing in a river.
Okay.
And it's going to be interesting to see what these people do, because they have historically said, okay, we're going to look at this pipeline. There's 800 river crossings on the pipeline that we're in charge of. And so the question is, how do we issue licenses for this thing? Well, we really only have to issue one license because it's really only one pipeline. But they could just as easily say, there's 800 river crossings here, so you're going to have to apply for 800 permits, and any one of them will shut you down. And you know, the army is in a position where they're starting to say, well, wait a minute, our guys are getting killed because they're moving around fossil fuels.
Yeah.
And we don't need to do that.
Yeah.
As long as Congress will allow us to use solar PVs and batteries, and of course the Navy is chiming in, oh, we don't need to buy fossil fuels because we can make them on our ships from carbon dioxide in the seawater.
That's a very interesting thing right there.
Oh, man. We don't need fossil fuels. We don't need them at all for anything.
Well, we have for a long, long time, but that day's over.
That day is over. And in fact, it's getting to be cheaper to do things other ways. What do you have to say on this?
This pipeline spill in Alabama has just given fuel to the protesters.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Absolutely. That's what it is. And of course, I wonder why the national media is not saying there was a pipeline spill, a 36-inch pipe of gasoline. They're shipping in that.
Maybe it was gasoline at that time.
Oh my gosh.
They can ship
anything they want.
Any liquid they want to. I mean, basically, they take a great big ball
mm-hmm.
and put the ball in there, and then a new liquid takes its place.
Yeah. And you know, 36-inch pipeline, people should try to imagine what that means. 36-inch pipeline.
That's a yard.
My gosh. I was present in Brooklyn when a 72-inch pipeline, which is twice the diameter, so it's 4 times the area, it'll carry 4 times as much water as a 36-inch pipeline, broke under Washington Avenue in Brooklyn.
Oh, wow.
And that was a nightmare because the people called up, said there's water running down the street in Washington Avenue. There's a water main break, and the people at the water commission looked at the map and said, "Wait a minute, there's no pipeline line under Washington Avenue. Why are it's a crank call." Next thing you know, it's the police calling and saying, "You got to do something fast." And then, of course, they after a while determined that it was a different pipeline that was a block over that had been misrepresented on the maps as being under a different street.
Okay.
And then they had to figure out where the valve was to shut it off.
Okay.
Which took them, by the time they were done with that, 8 hours had gone by. And then shutting a valve.
Drinking water.
Yes. Yeah. Shutting a valve on a 72-inch pipeline.
Takes a little while.
Takes 8 hours.
Does it really?
Yeah.
Wow.
So, I mean, that's 4 times as big. But okay, so does it take 2 hours to shut a valve on a 36-inch gasoline pipeline? If it does, you're going to be losing a lot of gasoline into that little river.
For sure.
So, yeah. And that's what the people in the Sioux tribe don't want. And I can't blame them. And especially considering that the United States government has acknowledged under treaty that they're sovereign.
Yeah.
So why is anybody trying to take their land away? I mean, this is a nightmare on every
it really is.
Every front. It really is. Okay.
Coming back home.
Yes, Vermont Biz.
Avangrid and Governor Shumlin break ground on a Deerfield wind farm.
Yeah, Avangrid was called Iberdrola.
Yeah, it's the U.S. subsidiary of Iberdrola is what it is.
Avangrid Renewables representatives joined by Vermont Governor Shumlin and local elected officials broke ground on the Deerfield Wind today in Searsburg on U.S. forest land. The 30-megawatt project will include 15 Gamesa wind turbines. They come from India, by the way.
Are they Indian? Oh, yeah? Wow.
And it will, I think they are. Maybe they're not. Maybe they're Spanish. I think they're Indian. And it will provide enough energy each year for about 14,000 Vermont households.
Well, if you want to locate these, if you can see where the Searsburg wind turbines are, and you can see them from the highway.
Right.
These are the other side of the highway,
right,
going up into the Green Mountain National Forest.
And I don't think they're all in Searsburg.
I think some of them are technically in Reedsboro.
Okay, I actually called up the people in Searsburg. I called up the guy who does the towns. You got to remember, Searsburg's only got about 90 residents.
Yeah, it's not a big town.
Not a big town, but I called up the person who does.
And Reedsboro's not much bigger.
Yeah, managed the town, and I said, I want to know what the effect of having a wind farm in this town is, and they have benefited hugely from that wind farm.
The people in that part of the state are quite supportive.
They're very supportive.
Yeah.
It's paying about half their local taxes.
But hey.
No, it's not. And he's saying, well, some of the money goes into running the town, reducing the taxes for the local residents, and the rest of the money, the other half of the money, is going into an account so that if we have any large costs coming up, like purchase of a new dump truck or something like that, or
we got the money.
We've got the money, and they've put a lot of money into that account. Okay, we are up to.
Well, I just wanted to mention something about this.
Yeah.
Your friend and mine, what's her name, Smith, Annette?
Yes.
She made about 10 comments on this article.
Yes.
And she is relentless.
Yeah,
this woman hates wind power.
She hates wind power.
But one of the things she did say is wind turbines are the biggest killer of eagles in America. And I looked that one up. And this came from a wind favorable site, but it said, eagle facilities are relatively uncommon at wind energy facilities.
Yeah.
In fact, less than 2% of all anthropogenic golden eagle losses in the United States occur at modern wind energy annually.
Right.
And only a handful of bald eagles have ever been lost in the history of the industry.
Yeah. Those eagles die from a lot of different anthropogenic causes.
Anthropogenic means man-caused.
Human caused.
People.
Yeah.
Yep.
And anthropogenic bird cause, avian mortalities include being killed by cats, things like that, because cats are introduced and invasive species in the United States, and they're killing the local sparrows, so that's anthropogenic, even though a cat did it. Birds flying into buildings and so forth. One of the big problems with eagles is that they can light on power lines, and their wingspan is long enough that if
they can short circuit.
They can short circuit, and they just get zapped on the power lines. Yeah. Okay, you want to stop that? I think that would be a great thing. If we
bury the power lines.
Bury the power lines? Yeah, I think eagles would have a hard time landing on buried power lines. But the power lines
and in the long run, they'd save money.
Yeah,
they're not cheaper to build, but they're cheaper to operate.
You don't have very many ice falls, ice storms taking down buried power lines. Okay.
Well, let's move along. We got
we're
the
up
last
to
day.
September 21st.
Got a nice picture here.
We have a nice picture. That's, I think, a kind of a pretty picture of a wind farm in Inner Mongolia. And that is it's called Inner because it's inside China. So this is not the Republic of Mongolia. It's a state or a province
within
in
China. That's Inner Mongolia, huh?
That's right.
Outer
Mongolia is the country.
Independent country.
Yeah, which China claims is actually part of China. Along with a bunch of other things.
Like Brooklyn.
Like the Philippines. It's
the Philippines. Yeah, right.
Yeah. Okay, and I'm not even going to try to pronounce the name of the wind farm, but this is an article from Clean Technica.
U.S. and China fossil fuel subsidies exceed $20 billion annually.
Yep.
We were talking about this before the show started.
This
is unreal.
Unreal. As an outcome of the recent G20 meeting in China, both China and the United States volunteered to publish peer reviews on their current fossil fuel subsidies. Together, the two countries are annually providing $20 billion in inefficient fossil fuel subsidies. Of this, $8.1 billion comes from the United States and $14.5 billion from China. And $8.1 billion is enough that you could have one heck of a party for everybody in New England.
I guess you could.
I guess you could. We could have the New England equivalent of Makahiki.
You're going to have to tell me what that is.
Makahiki is the New Year celebration in Hawaii.
Okay.
And what happens in Makahiki is that you're not allowed to fight. No wars in Makahiki. You aren't supposed to work on any kind of work other than things that are really immediately needed, like cooking. You aren't allowed to, there are certain things you're allowed to do. You're allowed to dance, you're allowed to tell stories, you're allowed to sing songs, you're allowed to party all night. And Makahiki lasts 3 months.
3 months?
Yes. We should have Makahiki. Anyway, we should be saying good night, good afternoon, good morning to anybody who's something, and we hope that you join us next time on Energy Week, and now we've got that Energy Week up behind
Good
us.
night, everybody, or a good
See
day,
you later.
however it may be,
See-
right now, where you are.
See you later.
What a hope gentle rains can fall upon the land, so lovely earth can stay lovely still.